Welcome, everyone, to Reform Thinking. This is the place where we really aim to approach Scripture with, well, the conviction that God is sovereign over everything. His word is our ultimate authority, and grace alone is our hope. Here, we take a deep dive into biblical truth and, importantly, its application for our lives today. We try to cut through some of the noise, get straight to the point, and help you understand the Scriptures in a way that hopefully truly sticks.
Yeah, that's the goal.
So today we're tackling Psalm 14, and our main source for this analysis is the really detailed commentary from Matthew Henry. It's just a helpful resource for illuminating these ancient verses, and yeah, we're ready to unpack its wisdom for you.
That's absolutely right. Our task today really is to pull out the key insights from this psalm about human nature, about sin, and crucially, the divine hope it offers us.
Right.
We want to give you a clear path to grasp what this ancient text means for us, in our modern lives. And Matthew Henry, with his careful attention to the text and theological precision, he gives us a really excellent framework to examine these verses.
Okay, so let's open up Psalm 14. Now, when we come to a biblical text, it's pretty natural to wonder about the history behind it, right? Like, what exactly prompted the writing?
Sort of the context.
Exactly, the context. We often look for that specific occasion to, fully get the meaning. But with Psalm 14, Matthew Henry makes a pretty striking observation right away. He notes that the exact occasion for its writing is, quote, not clearly known.
Yeah.
The commentary says quite plainly, it does not appear upon what occasion this psalm was penned, nor whether upon any particular occasion. It almost feels like, a deliberate holding back of context. Leaves us with a bit of mystery, doesn't it?
It does, and it's quite telling, I think. While there have definitely been some historical guesses, some scholars have suggested David might have written this during Saul's persecution, which was intense, or maybe later during Absalom's rebellion, that heartbreaking time. But Matthew Henry doesn't really dwell on those.
Yeah.
His commentary is pretty decisive in setting those specific historical links aside. He calls them mere conjectures, which have not certainty enough to warrant us to expound the psalm by them.
So just guesswork, basically.
Pretty much. And it's not just a casual dismissal. It feels like a deliberate choice by Henry to guide our focus away from maybe speculative historical settings.
Okay.
The message seems to be that while, specific, maybe deeply personal struggle might have sparked it for David, the psalm's scope just quickly grows beyond that. It kind of frees us up to look past David's personal situation and really consider the broader, more universal truths about human nature and sin that the psalm lays out.
So instead of being locked into one moment in Israelite history, we're invited into this much wider theological conversation. That ambiguity isn't a roadblock then, but maybe an invitation to see the message is bigger, something that speaks across time and cultures.
I think that's exactly it.
And this universal scope you mentioned is really hammered home when we look at how the Apostle Paul handles Psalm 14. He kind of gives us the main interpretive lens, right?
Yeah, what Paul does is really compelling. In his letter to the Romans, specifically Romans 3, verse 10, and the following verses, he quotes parts of this psalm. But not just randomly. It's a crucial piece of a much bigger argument he's building.
Okay. What's the argument?
Paul is systematically making his case for universal human sinfulness. He's aiming to show that, quote, Jews and Gentiles are all under sin, like Romans 3.9 says.
Okay, everyone.
Everyone. And then he broadens it even more, stating that all the world is guilty before God in Romans 3.99. So Paul doesn't limit Psalm 14 to just David's enemies or some specific conflict back then.
No.
He elevates it. He presents it as a comprehensive description of the depravity of human nature, the sinfulness of the sin we are conceived and born in, and the deplorable corruption of a great part of mankind.
Wow. So it's not just for David's enemies back then.
Not at all. It's this sweeping indictment that applies to all of humanity. It reveals a condition that affects every single one of us. So the psalmist's words reach way beyond ancient Israel. They become like a mirror for every person.
That's a vital connection. So, okay, David definitely had enemies. He suffered under persecution, but the psalm takes their actions and connects them to the general corruption of nature.
Exactly.
So David's insight wasn't just about the specific evil he faced, but it widened into this realization that not his enemies only, but all the children of men were thus corrupted. It's recognizing this pervasive, deep problem in the human condition itself, not just some isolated bad behavior. It makes you pause, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And think about how the evil we see around us, and maybe even in ourselves, often comes from this deeper shared root.
Yeah, absolutely. And this broad universal application then leads us to ask, okay, how does Matthew Henry structure our understanding of this message? He gives us a clear roadmap, actually, a way to navigate this kind of bleak assessment of humanity, but also see the path towards hope.
Okay, good. We need that.
He outlines the Psalm's flow. He sees it starting with what he calls a charge exhibited against a wicked world. That's verse 1. Then it moves into the proof of the charge, covering verses 2 and 3. That's the evidence for the accusation.
Got it.
After that, the psalmist launches into a serious expostulation with sinners, especially with persecutors, upon it. That's verses 4 through 6. This is where, the consequences and the specific ways sin shows up are really laid bare.
Okay.
And finally, the psalm wraps up with this really striking shift. A believing prayer for the salvation of Israel and a joyful expectation of it in verse 7. This structure isn't just random, it's a carefully crafted theological progression.
That structure sounds like it's going to be our map for this deep dive then. It really sets the stage nicely. It moves us logically from, the psalmist's grasp of humanity's deep failings right into the hope that's found only in God's action. It lays bare the wound first, shows its depth, before pointing us clearly to the doctor and the cure. It acknowledges the heavy reality of sin, but then points our gaze toward God's sovereign intervention. Okay, so we've established the universal reach of Psalm 14. Now let's turn to the core of the problem it identifies, the malignant nature of sin. Matthew Henry starts exploring this by pinpointing its ultimate root. He says, pretty forcefully, that there's something of practical atheism at the bottom of all sin. That's a really strong claim, isn't it?
It is strong, yeah.
Challenges any surface-level idea of where sin comes from.
It really does, and it's a crucial distinction he makes. The phrase, "the fool hath said in his heart, there is no God," in verse 1, that's the key.
Right.
Matthew Henry carefully clarifies this isn't necessarily like an intellectual denial of God's existence in a philosophical way, like someone just arguing a point. It's actually a much more sinister internal posture. It's questioning his dominion and providence, his role as the judge or governor of the world.
So not denying God exists, but denying his authority.
Exactly. The person might intellectually say, yeah, God exists, but their practical living, their choices, their day-to-day attitude effectively denies his rightful place as sovereign ruler and moral authority.
I see.
It's a rebellion of the will, really, more than a doubt of the mind, living as if God just has no say in their affairs. He describes this practical atheism as an imagination, or even more pointedly, a wish.
A wish.
Yeah, it's like a secret desire, a barely audible whisper deep in the heart where someone wishes there were none, no God, and, pleases himself with the fancy that it is possible there may be none.
Wow. So actively pushing down the truth.
Kind of. Think of it like this. The ultimate purpose of this internal practical atheism is twofold. First, it aims to silence the clamors of his conscience, the part that would convict them of doing wrong.
Right, that nagging feeling.
Exactly. And second, it serves as a mechanism for the emboldening of himself in his evil ways. It's like a self-deception strategy to avoid accountability and just give free rein to sinful desires.
Makes sense. If you silence the conscience.
Right. The conscience, if it's not quieted, would be this constant, unwelcome interruption. And wishing there's no God is like this desperate attempt to feel free from any moral restraint.
And the person who thinks like this, who lives out this practical atheism, the psalm immediately calls them a fool. The commentary doesn't pull any punches. It says this person isn't just simple and unwise in their understanding, but also wicked and profane in their character and actions. It's a total indictment.
Yeah, comprehensive.
The source makes it clear. Atheistical thoughts are very foolish, wicked thoughts, and they are at the bottom of a great deal of the wickedness that is in this world. It's saying this isn't some small intellectual error. It's the corrupt foundation for so much evil.
Right.
It makes me think how many actions that maybe seem disconnected from God are actually rooted in this deeper, heart-level denial of his active rule.
Absolutely. And Matthew Henry points out that this kind of thinking goes against the clearest light, against his own knowledge and convictions, and the common sentiments of all the wise and sober part of mankind.
So it's not ignorance, it's suppression.
Exactly. The person doing this isn't operating out of genuine ignorance, but actively pushing down what they, deep down, know is true. The commentary suggests something quite sobering, almost chilling, about the fallen human heart. It says, "No man will say there is no God till he is so hardened in sin that it has become his interest that there should be none to call him to an account."
Wow. That's stark.
It is. It implies that the ultimate denial of God isn't usually an intellectual journey someone just arrives at through reason. Instead, it's often a moral compromise, a self-serving blindness they adopt because the truth of God's existence and sovereignty becomes this uncomfortable obstacle to their own unchecked wickedness and desires.
So the heart shapes the mind in that case.
It seems so, yeah,
Yeah.
rather than the other way around.
Okay, so sin starts with this deep, practical rejection of God, this internal dismissal of his authority. But it's not just an offense against God. It has devastating effects on us, on humanity itself. Henry moves from sin's affront to the Creator, to its effect on the created, the disgrace and debasement it puts upon the nature of man.
Mm-hmm.
So sin doesn't just break our relationship with God, it actively corrupts who we were made to be.
That's right. And what's really striking is the stark contrast Henry draws between humanity's original state and our condition under sin's influence. He describes sinners as having become corrupt, quite degenerated from what man was in his innocent estate.
Degenerated. Strong word.
It is. This isn't just a small slip-up, it's a complete turning away from humanity's created purpose and goodness. He uses vivid, almost visceral language, saying they turn filthy and putrid.
Huh?
Yeah, that imagery doesn't just paint a picture of moral decay, but of a complete repulsive rot, a spiritual and ethical stench, really. All human faculties, intellect, will, affections become disordered, twisted, misaligned from their proper function. This total corruption makes them odious to their maker, a strong term showing God's righteous displeasure and aversion. And furthermore, it renders them utterly incapable of answering the ends of their creation.
Meaning they can't fulfill their purpose.
Exactly. They can't fulfill the purpose they were made for, to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. It's a complete inversion of what God originally intended for us, a tragic ruin of His handiwork.
And what are the practical results of this deep corruption? Henry makes it plain. He says sinners do no good. They become unprofitable burdens of the earth, just existing without fulfilling their purpose, bringing no honor to God, and in the end, doing themselves no real kindness.
Yeah.
It's a picture of complete brokenness and futility, isn't it? Not just failing to be what God designed, but actively harming the world and themselves. This no good isn't just lacking positive action. It's like a wasted existence in God's creation.
Indeed. And it's not just a passive failure to do no good. The commentary is clear they also do a great deal of hurt.
Right. They're not just useless, they're destructive.
Exactly. They perform abominable works, actions that are hateful to God by their very nature. And these works often end up becoming hateful to the sinner themselves, leading to guilt, shame, self-destruction.
Like a cycle.
It is.
Yeah.
And Henry draws this direct, powerful link to those described in Titus 1.16 who profess they know God, but in works deny Him.
The disconnect between words and actions.
Precisely. Their outward claim of knowing God is totally contradicted by their inward corruption, which shows up in deeds that are the opposite of God's character. Their actions betray their words, confirming that deep internal corruption Henry called practical atheism. It creates this tragic, self-feeding cycle of rebellion and self-destruction. Denying God in the heart leads to tangible destructive behavior in the world.
Wow. With such a clear and frankly forceful picture of sin's malignant nature, this internal rot Henry describes, it becomes painfully clear that sin is far from being an isolated issue. It's depicted not as just an occasional mistake, but as an epidemic disease that has infected the whole race of mankind. This isn't about a few bad apples. It's presented as a pervasive condition striking at the core of who we are as humans.
Yeah, that universality is key.
It suggests this isn't a problem we can just, legislate away or educate ourselves out of. It's something deeper, systemic.
And to really drive this home, Matthew Henry brings God Himself into the picture, not as some distant observer, but as an eyewitness.
An eyewitness? How so?
God is depicted as looking down from heaven, not just a casual glance, but with an all-seeing eye, specifically to take a view of all the children of men.
Okay, so a divine inspection.
Exactly. It's not passive observation. It's a divine inquiry, a comprehensive survey of humanity. Imagine the Creator, with perfect knowledge, actively scanning His creation, looking for something specific. It really highlights the active, relational aspect of God's interaction with His fallen world, a constant assessment of its moral state. This scene, painted by the psalmist and explained by Henry, it's one of solemn divine scrutiny, a kind of celestial audit of the human heart.
And what is God looking for in this inquiry?
It's remarkably specific and kind of poignant. God is searching whether there were any among them that did understand themselves aright, their duty and interests, and did seek God and set him before them.
So looking for anyone with true spiritual understanding and devotion.
Precisely. Anyone engaging with him and his standards rightly. And Henry emphasizes the seriousness of this search, even suggesting God would be glad to find out one good person.
This one.
Yeah. It echoes examples like Noah in the Old World, right? That solitary figure of righteousness amidst widespread corruption before the flood.
True.
This desire to find even one righteous person, knowing how pervasive sin is, it highlights both God's justice in seeing the sin and his gracious desire for goodness. It really underscores the gravity of the situation if even God's eager search comes up empty.
So what is the outcome of this divine search, this all-seeing observation?
Well, Matthew Henry, drawing straight from the Psalm, reveals the result. And it's sobering. He states unequivocally, "They have all gone aside, the apostasy is universal, there is none that doeth good, no, not one."
Wow. No, not one.
It's a complete sweep, no exceptions when it comes to humanity's natural, unregenerate state. There's no pocket of innocence, no group untouched by this infection. This universality is a critical point, and honestly, sometimes a hard one for us to really accept, especially in a world that often wants to celebrate human potential.
It really cuts against the grain of modern thinking sometimes.
It does, and this conclusion clarifies what going aside really means. Humanity has gone aside from the right of their duty, the way that leads to happiness, and have turned into the paths of the destroyer.
So it's not just a minor detour.
Not at all. It's a wholesale turning away, a deliberate apostasy from God's intended path, leading straight to ruin. And the commentary makes a crucial theological point here, rooted firmly in Reformed understanding.
Okay, what's that?
Whatever good is in any of the children of men, or is done by them, it is not of themselves, it is God's work in them.
So any goodness is from God's grace, not us.
Exactly. It highlights the inherent corruption of fallen humanity in stark contrast with God's original creation. Remember Genesis 1.31, all was very good.
Right.
But later, by Genesis 6.5, God found that all was very bad. It shows this dramatic, devastating shift. It's a powerful picture of our fallen state, emphasizing that any true goodness we see in people after the fall is purely a product of divine grace, not human ability.
So if that's the starting point for all the children of men, this universal infection, it connects directly to our desperate need for a complete internal change, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
The commentary applies this sobering reality right to our experience. It says, "Since that which is born of the flesh is flesh, let us not marvel that we are told we must be born again."
Yeah, it follows logically.
It's not presented like some optional self-improvement plan. It's shown as a vital, necessary transformation given this deep-seated universal infection we all carry. It reminds us our spiritual condition needs nothing less than a new creation. Okay, so this internal corruption, this practical atheism Henry talks about, it's definitely not just a hidden abstract idea.
No, it manifests.
It doesn't stay buried in the heart. Instead, it shows up in active, outward ways, impacting how people actually behave. The psalmist moves from describing the internal depravity to detailing the tangible, observable actions that come from it. Henry points out 4 clear instances of wickedness, right? Let's look at those.
That's right. The first way this internal corruption shows itself is that they are identified as workers of iniquity.
Workers of iniquity, what does that mean exactly?
It describes people who design it, they practice it, and take as much pleasure in it as ever any man did in his business. Henry paints this picture of deliberate, intentional sin.
So it's not accidental.
Not at all. Not a momentary lapse. It's like an adopted profession, a chosen way of life. They approach wickedness with the same diligence, planning, and even satisfaction that a dedicated craftsman might approach their trade.
Wow. So sin isn't just committed, it's cultivated and enjoyed.
That's the idea. It shows this deep perversion of the will, where what is evil is embraced as if it were desirable.
Okay, that's the first one. What's next?
The second instance really highlights their extreme animosity, especially towards God's people. They're depicted as eating up God's people with as much greediness as they eat bread.
That's chilling imagery.
It is. It speaks to an innate and inveterate enmity, a hostility that isn't just superficial disagreement. It stems from a deeper hatred for God himself, whose people they are attacking.
So attacking God's people is like attacking God.
In a sense, yes. This persecution is described as being like meat and drink, to them a source of sustenance and satisfaction. It's done easily, daily, securely, without either check of conscience when they do it or remorse of conscience when they have done it.
No conscience at all.
Seemingly not. The commentary draws a parallel to Joseph's brothers, remember? After throwing him into a pit, they just calmly sat down to eat bread, utterly devoid of conscience.
Yeah, I remember that. Horrifying.
It highlights this callous indifference to suffering, a spiritual hunger for destruction that's deeply ingrained in their corrupt nature. Their cruelty isn't just an emotional outburst. It's calculated, almost routine malice.
Okay, that's two. What's the third instance?
The third is a clear manifestation of their practical atheism. They call not upon the Lord.
They don't pray.
Right, and this isn't just a simple oversight or forgetting. Matthew Henry insists this neglect of prayer shows a clear contempt for God himself.
Contempt. Strong word again.
It is. It's a deliberate choice to ignore and dismiss the sovereign ruler of the universe. The commentary identifies this lack of communication with God, this refusal to acknowledge him in prayer, as a core reason why people run into all manner of wickedness.
Interesting connection. Lack of prayer leads to wickedness.
Well, when people cut themselves off from the source of all grace, wisdom, and moral guidance, they're left vulnerable to every temptation and impulse of their fallen nature. Prayer is basically admitting dependence, right?
Yeah.
So its absence is like a declaration of self-sufficiency, which inevitably leads towards moral chaos.
Makes sense. Okay, and the fourth instance.
Finally, the fourth instance of their iniquity, they shame the counsel of the poor.
Shame the counsel of the poor. What does that mean?
This is an active form of spiritual persecution. They upbraid them with making God their refuge. They openly mock the religious devotion and trust that the righteous place in God.
So they make fun of people for trusting God.
Exactly. Their intention is to put others out of conceit with religion, to make faith seem foolish or pointless. They do this by portraying the duties of religion as mean, melancholy, and unprofitable, and its privileges, like trusting God, as insufficient to make a man safe and happy.
Trying to discourage faith in others.
Precisely. It's this calculated effort to undermine and scoff at piety. They want to spread their own atheistic contempt and discourage anyone from finding solace or strength in God. This aggressive mockery reveals a desire not just to sin themselves, but to drag others down with them, to stamp out any glimmer of hope or truth that might challenge their own depravity.
That's a truly bleak picture of human evil. And Matthew Henry gives a serious warning here against doing this, doesn't he?
He does. He says, it is ill jesting with edged tools and dangerous persecuting those that make God their refuge. It's a clear caution that their actions have severe consequences, both now and later, because God himself stands up for his people.
Right. But this behavior, this wickedness, it also stems from that deeper problem Henry keeps returning to, their lack of true knowledge.
Yes. The commentary links their abusive actions directly back to a fundamental lack of understanding. It explicitly says they have no knowledge.
And again, that's not about IQ, right?
No, not general intelligence. It's a lack of moral and spiritual discernment. Henry elaborates, saying that if they had any knowledge of God, if they did rightly understand themselves and would but consider things as men, then they wouldn't be so abusive and barbarous as they are to the people of God.
So their cruelty comes from ignorance of God and themselves.
Exactly. Their wickedness isn't a sign of being smart or strong. It's a sign of profound ignorance about God's character, their own purpose, and the consequences of their actions. They are indeed fools, thinking and acting against clear spiritual light, and maybe even against their own deeply suppressed convictions. Their folly blinds them, leading them down this path of self-destructive malice.
Okay, so despite looking secure on the outside, maybe confident in their wickedness, enjoying it even, Henry says they actually face great fear. Where does that come from? It seems almost contradictory to their outward attitude. What's the source of this hidden danger?
This is where Henry offers a really insightful and maybe surprising look at the inner turmoil of the wicked. He unpacks the source of this danger, saying their own consciences condemned what they did and filled them with secret terrors.
Ah, so it's internal, the conscience fights back.
It seems so. This isn't external punishment yet, it's an internal judgment, this corrosive fear eating away at them from inside. The commentary uses a powerful analogy. Quote, "They sweetly suck the blood of the saints, but in their bowels it is turned and become the gall of asps."
Wow. What they enjoyed turns poisonous inside them.
Exactly. What they initially found satisfying in their persecution later becomes this bitter, poisonous torment within their own souls. Matthew Henry points to biblical examples like Pashur, who persecuted Jeremiah and then became terrors to themselves and all about them.
Right, I remember him.
It illustrates that those who will not fear God perhaps may be made to fear at the shaking of a leaf. Their inner world is far from peaceful. It's actually a place of deep, secret dread and psychological torment. It's a chilling testimony to the inescapable justice that even a silenced conscience can eventually inflict. This fear, often unseen by others, is a constant companion for those who reject God.
That is a truly stark and comprehensive picture of human sin and its awful consequences. It can feel quite heavy reading through that.
It definitely can.
But Psalm 14 in its inspired wisdom, it doesn't just leave us there in the darkness, does it? It pivots. It offers this powerful counterpoint, shifting our focus to the comfort and hope that are always available for God's people, even when surrounded by such corruption and hostility.
That turn is so important.
Yeah, it feels necessary for the human heart after dwelling on the previous verses.
And what's really encouraging here is that even when things look bleak, even when facing active persecution, the song gives concrete, present assurances for the righteous. Things they can hold on to right now.
Okay, what are those?
Matthew Henry highlights two main comforts. First, there's the reassurance of God's tangible presence. He is in the generation of the righteous.
God is with them.
Exactly. Not just an abstract idea, but a living reality. It means God isn't distant, not some absentee landlord, but he's intimately involved with his people. He dwells among them, guiding, sustaining, actively participating in their lives. That presence brings real comfort, knowing you're never truly alone.
That's huge. What's the second comfort?
The second is God's active protection. The Lord is their refuge. This provides a very real sense of security, a safe haven, even despite enemies' mockery.
A refuge. A safe place.
Yes. A divine shield against the threats, the taunts, the dangers they face. And Henry adds that this divine ownership and protection, it will be powerfully confirmed in the final judgment.
Vindication.
Right. And that moment will only add to the terror and confusion of sinners to see God own the generation of the righteous, which they have hated and bantered. It promises this great reversal, a clear demonstration of God's sovereign care for his own.
So there's real, tangible comfort right now. God is near, God is a refuge. But then the song looks beyond the immediate, doesn't it? It builds on that assurance with a believing prayer for the salvation of Israel and a joyful expectation of it. This points us forward to a future hope much bigger than just surviving today.
It really does. It's a cosmic hope.
Yeah.
Matthew Henry explains that this hope reaches far beyond, say, David's personal situation, like just hoping to return from Absalom's rebellion or win a political victory. Instead, Henry sees it pointing towards a much broader messianic expectation. It's a deep longing for the salvation which should be wrought out by the Redeemer, who is expected to come to Zion to turn away ungodliness from Jacob. He's directly quoting Romans 11.26 there.
So it's about the Messiah, about ultimate salvation.
Exactly. This isn't just about earthly freedom or restoring Israel's golden age. It's about spiritual restoration. A longing for God to act decisively, to reverse the deep-seated corruption of human nature that the psalm just described so vividly.
A prayer for God to fix the root problem.
Yes. A plea for God to bring in his righteous reign and conquer sin once and for all through his chosen Messiah. It's a prayer for the ultimate healing of this broken world.
And this isn't just passively waiting, is it? It feels active, hopeful.
Very much so. The commentary describes this eager anticipation of times of reformation, times that will be as joyful times as these are melancholy ones. It anticipates a definitive end to that universal corruption we talked about earlier.
Something truly transformative to look forward to.
Absolutely. Something that will utterly change the current bleak reality. It gives the listener something substantial, something guaranteed.
So how does this salvation, these Reformation times, actually happen?
Well, Henry connects it directly to the Redeemer's triumph. He links the Psalm's hope straight to the work of Christ. He says, "The Redeemer shall ascend on high and lead captivity captive, and Jacob shall then rejoice."
Leading captivity captive. That's powerful imagery.
It speaks of Christ's victory over sin and death, his triumphant ascension, and then the liberation of his people from the bondage of spiritual captivity. Henry summarizes, "The triumphs of Zion's king will be the joys of Zion's children."
So the king's victory is the people's joy.
Exactly. It's a picture of total, resounding victory over sin and its devastating effects, ending in this joyous, communal celebration for everyone who belongs to God. a joy that's secure because it's rooted in the finished work of the King. It's not temporary, it's permanent, secured.
And this hope, it points even further, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To the ultimate fulfillment, a grand cosmic redemption.
Yes, beyond even the first coming. The commentary states, with this clear eschatological view, the second coming of Christ, finally to extinguish the dominion of sin and Satan, will be the completing of this salvation.
The final completion.
Right. And this is described as the hope and will be the joy of every Israelite indeed. It's this comprehensive cosmic redemption that believers have looked forward to throughout history. A complete and glorious reversal of everything wrong with the world, securing eternal righteousness and peace.
Wow.
And this grand vision, it provides really relevant comfort for believers today, right now, even as we live in a world still struggling with sin and suffering.
How so?
Matthew Henry encourages us to find solace with reference to the present sins of sinners and sufferings of saints. This hope isn't just some abstract theology for the future, it's a practical, sustaining truth for our daily lives.
Okay.
It's meant to encourage mutual comfort among believers, reminding us that even with sin still present, even with the trials the righteous face, God's plan for salvation is absolutely certain and will be fully realized. This sure hope lets us endure present hardships with a joyful, expectant heart, knowing our King will return to set everything right.
Okay, this deep dive into Psalm 14, using Matthew Henry's commentary as our guide, it's taken us on quite a journey, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has.
Started in that heavy place of universal human depravity, the malignancy of sin, but ultimately brought us to the bright light of divine grace and the sure promise of salvation through the Redeemer. It offers this clear path from humanity's profound brokenness to God's sovereign restoration.
It does indeed. And Matthew Henry's application advice for this psalm is just incredibly practical, I think, especially for those of us trying to align our thinking with Reformed principles.
What are the key takeaways he suggests?
Well, first, he encourages us to lament the corruption of our own nature. He urges this sober acknowledgement of how deep our fallenness goes, rather than any superficial denial.
Be honest about our condition.
Exactly. And from that honest assessment, we're then led to recognize what need we have of the grace of God, to understand clearly that any good in us or any righteous act we do, it originates not from ourselves, but solely from his merciful working in us.
Grace alone.
Grace alone. And given that, as the commentary reminds us, that which is born of the flesh is flesh, therefore we shouldn't be surprised, we shouldn't marvel that we are told we must be born again. This divine intervention is absolutely necessary. It's an act of new creation.
Right.
And finally, facing the ongoing reality of the sins of sinners and sufferings of saints in this world, right now we're told to find comfort and strength in the salvation of Israel and the victorious triumphs of Zion's King. We should take heart and encourage each other with this glorious future that is absolutely guaranteed by God's faithfulness.
That brings us then to our final thought for you, our listener, something to carry with you from this deep dive into Psalm 14. How does understanding this practical atheism, which Matthew Henry identifies at the heart of all sin, how does that reshape your view of humanity's ongoing rebellion, both out there in the world and maybe even, honestly, within your own heart?
Yeah.
And then, how does the promised salvation of Israel, culminating in Christ's final return, how does that anchor your hope in a world that's still clearly marked by so much corruption and suffering? Something to reflect on there.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for joining us here on Reformed Thinking for this deep dive into Psalm 14. We really trust that the truth we've uncovered here, guided by Matthew Henry's careful commentary, will give you much to contemplate and apply to your own walk of faith in the days ahead.
Yeah, may these biblical insights continue to be relevant and life-giving for you as you walk in light of God's sovereign plan and his unfailing promises.
We sign off for now. Until our next deep dive.